welcome to another episode of Timetable London, a podcast crafted by lovers of London for lovers of London. We're coming to you today from the Ship. There are a lot of ships in London, admittedly. This pub might regard itself as the flagship, an ancient hostelry tucked away down an alleyway running between Gracechurch Street and Eastcheap. Previously, this was a coaching inn called the Talbot, which burnt down in the Great Fire in 1666 and was later rebuilt as the Ship in honour of the dock workers who used to drink here. The Ship is a Nicholson's pub, part of a collection of historic pubs started by William Nicholson, a Victorian businessman, MP and first-class cricketer who financed the wonderful pavilion at Lord's with funds from his family distillery. So, a special treat today for podcast number 6 is that we've got the return of podcast guest number 1, who sat with us in the Devereux pub over at Temple, out of the Grecian Coffee House as was, and talked to us about his experiences walking the London Underground. So this tees up a question which I regret that we haven't asked a lot of other people. That it'd be very interesting to know from all our guests if, in advance of this podcast, we might talk with them about how their experience as whatever it is, whether it's a city guide or a mayor of London or an esteemed author, to what extent has that activity affected their love of London? We're all lovers of London, but clearly we're going to love London in different ways. So, Mark, from episode number 1, what was it particularly that got you to our table, first of all? And secondly, to what extent has it changed your view of London?
Well, I was on the original one, I don't know about as an esteemed author, but I was an author because I wrote a book called Walk the Lines, in which I walked the whole tube system overground. All 11 lines, all 400 and odd miles, it took about 6 months. And so 11 lines over 6 months, every other week or so, I was coming up to London. I live about an hour outside London now.
And you did then?
And I did then, yeah.
Yeah.
And I would come up to walk a line, and I make the point in the book, and this can go straight in Sude's corner in Private Eye, this is the most pretentious thing you're going to hear all day, that I felt like the jackal in Day of the Jackal. He goes into Paris to do his job, makes all his preparations. And I felt like I was coming into London to do my job of walking the length of the Piccadilly line or the Central line or whatever it was. And it was really exciting, and it made me see London in a different way, that it wasn't just, I do this all the time anyway, I come up and just sit in pubs on my own and listen to people's conversations or meet up with friends and all the human drama you see in London. I'm doing that anyway. But doing it as part of a mission to walk along the whole tube line it just felt thrilling. It was one of those pointlessly exciting things. It's the sort of thing that my partner would go, no one would know if you made it up. And I'd say, well, I'd know if I made it up.
Well, quite.
And so it made me see London in a different way like that. It also, obviously, there's just the sheer practical point that I was going to parts of London I'd never been to before.
Yeah.
By the way, Tam, I didn't know about sitting in a Nicholson's pub. I've been sitting in Nicholson's pubs, this one in particular, and all the ones around here around London, for literally decades now, and I didn't know that he was the guy who built the pavilion at Lord's.
So nor did I, actually. Yeah.
Thank you very much for that. What I did know about the pavilion at Lord's is it's famous. I always cite it as the perfect example of why London's a great city, being the new and the old together.
Yeah.
Because you've got the pavilion at one end of the ground, and facing it, at the nursery end, you've got the media centre, which was built in 1999, built by a shipbuilding company, that big white modern building.
Yeah.
Because the back of it is curved. When you look at it from the side, not from the playing area, the back of it is curved and is essentially a ship laid on its side. So that's another connection with the ship. We're sitting here in the ship. It was built by a shipbuilding company down in the West Country, I think. So they built that and put it on its side. Anyway, Lord's is a perfect example of the new and the old together, with that beautiful red terracotta pavilion with all that gorgeous red stone.
Yeah.
The only reason they used that red stone was they wanted to do it in white Portland stone, the same as every other 19th century building in London. But there was a mason strike, and for whatever reason they couldn't get hold of the stone they wanted. So they had to use that substitute stone, as they call it, which is now the most beautiful aspect of the building that everyone loves.
So, while Mark is a past guest from number 1, I don't know if you knew this, prize guest today, Henry Williams, joined us for the podcast today. Did you know that this man here was our first podcast guest? Mark Mason from Walk the Line, the underground thing.
Yes, you mentioned.
I mentioned that yesterday when we were talking.
Exactly. Which sounds like a really fascinating project.
Yeah.
Oh, thank you, Henry.
Yeah.
20 quid we said for that, didn't we?
Yeah.
That's what I owe you. No, it was fun. And Henry and I were just saying, actually, we know each other from diary days. He used to work on the Londoners' Diary on the Standard, and I've been at spectator parties and oldie parties, and we've both been hobnobbing with Barry Cryer and all the spectator types, and yes, so we know each other from past existences.
So there actually is a sort of a sub-community of diarists. You've got your own handshakes, maybe?
Yeah, I think it's probably the more sort of the pallor of lots of parties and early starts to get their story in the next day.
Right.
But yes, there's
Well,
definitely...
in any case, Henry Williams, glad to have you join us today, and look forward to our chat.
Yeah.
You say you don't know this pub?
I've never been here, the Ship. It looks fantastic. There's sort of down this sort of little alley. And particularly on VE Day, there's lots of people coming from St. Paul's now.
Of course, yeah.
All in their suited and booted and stuff.
Yeah.
So it's a great spot to be.
Right. Have you been here, Geoff?
I probably have. I've been to most pubs at some time, Tam.
The ones you enjoyed most, you remember least.
This was the 7th pub on a pub crawl, was it? Which is why you can't remember it.
So where have you come from now?
So I've just come from Blackfriars, actually. So I walked along the South Bank, which is, it's looking glorious as well.
Oh, I bet.
Fighting my way through lots of French students hanging outside of Tate Modern, buskers, and just the various sort of London life going on.
Yeah.
Yeah. And lovely walk across London Bridge as well. So sort of seeing London in all its glory, which feels quite apposite.
He's a man after your own heart. Why go to a place if you can go to a place 2 miles away and walk the distance?
Absolutely. You should always get off a bus trip early and do the last few stops, because it's probably going to be quicker than going on a London bus. And yes, that's why Los Angeles isn't a city, because you can't walk it. Los Angeles is 6 towns joined by freeways. Whereas London, Paris, New York, they're all great cities. You can walk around, and the things you overhear and the quirky little sights you see, that's what it's all about.
But you've parked on a key fact that's picked up by a lot of my friends from North America when they come here, and they say, you don't understand here the value of the double-decker bus. But we love them. We get on a bus and ride for free all day.
What about a triple-decker bus, Tam?
Triple-decker bus?
Is there such a thing?
You should just come up with an invention, Geoff, I think. London double-decker bus fact is, one of those can lean further from the vertical than you can without falling over.
Pretty cool.
Because they put huge strips of pig iron down the chassis to make it bottom heavy, so that even if everyone's sitting upstairs and there's no one downstairs, it still won't tilt. And if you go on a popular search engine and do an image search, you can see them testing one at London Transport headquarters, not in 55 Broadway, but at some garage somewhere, testing one in the 1950s. And they would have it in a cradle, some sort of rope system, ready to catch it when it did finally fall.
Yeah.
But then they would just tilt it, and it gets to, seriously, not far off about 45 degrees without falling over. Great. And then a little bit further than that. And in fact, they tried to do it on Top Gear. They did when Top Gear had the original 3, when it was decent, when they had Clarkson, May and Hammond doing it. They did one of their weird races at Silverstone or somewhere, and the Stig was driving a London double-decker bus. And his job, as part of the script for the race, was to turn the thing over on a corner, and he couldn't do it. They stripped out, in the end, the only way they could do it, he'd come back from every lap going, look, I'm putting the full lock on, I'm going way too fast, and the thing still won't tip over. The only way they could do it was they had to strip out everything from the bottom from the bottom deck, take all the seats out, every little bit of weight they could get out, and fill the top deck with sandbags and loads of weight, and eventually then he managed to tip it over.
Isn't that the neatest thing, the very neatest thing about a pub conversation? Everybody's sitting here, I'm noticing you all sitting here absolutely rapt. Geoff sitting here looking quite smug that my daft question led to that great fact.
Well, thank goodness that we say the ironworks, the steelworks in Scunthorpe, because it has a purpose, doesn't it? The only thing I remember from testing out the double-decker buses is that scene from On the Buses. I think they get the women who are all going to become the bus drivers. They have a swap around, and they have a skid pan and everything. Fantastic scenes.
Now
wonderful
you're talking.
series.
On the Buses, Reg Varney. I hope this podcast is going out to the right demographic here, because only the people of a certain age are going to remember Reg Varney from On the Buses. But he opened the first cash point in the UK. We know this?
No, I heard that, yeah.
Reg Varney, 1967, I think. It was Barclays up in somewhere in North London. Muswell Hill or somewhere? somewhere up in North London. And Reg Varney was paid a tenner to turn up as a celebrity to open. And he withdrew his fee from the cash point as a publicity stunt for the...
He was a fantastic painter. Absolutely
Was he?
world-class painter, yeah. He
You
really
would
was.
never guess it.
His paintings used to sell for tens of thousands.
Really?
I'm not joking, yeah.
Did he paint any double-decker buses, I wonder?
I don't know. He probably got asked to do that quite a few
A
times.
bit like Al Bean, the fourth man to walk on the moon. He ended up earning a fortune as an artist. A lot of his paintings were lunar landscapes.
Is he the one with the golf clubs?
No, that was... no, golf clubs was... this is where we need to edit, because the man who played golf on the moon was called... He was the oldest guy on the moon. He was 47, and his name will come back to me.
Aldrin.
No. This is on about Apollo...
I think he was almost like the last guy to go, wasn't he?
He was on about 14 or 15.
Right.
And his name was... Come on. I think Henry's
The,
got to do
the
the
unnamed
research.
search engine's our friend, probably.
Ballesteros.
He was... Give me his first name and I'll give you the surname, because it's really annoying me now.
Okay.
I know that it was a club that he had to smuggle on board because NASA weren't going to let him do it. And he...
Okay,
First name?
that's very interesting.
Go on, first name?
Because he's famous for something else as well.
He was a senator, became a US senator.
But first name is Alan.
Alan Shepard.
Yeah.
And...
Was also the first man in space.
Yes.
The first American.
Yes. And he was brilliant. And Alan Shepard, as well as back in the late 50s when they first fired a rocket into space, he was second man in the world after Yuri Gagarin to go into space. And they said to him when he got back, they said to Al Shepard, what was your thought what were your final thoughts as the rocket was there ready to take off and they were doing the countdown? And he said, my only thought was that every part of this spacecraft was built by the lowest bidder.
Wow. Just a shout out across the table to our executive producer. Give credit to Christopher Wynn. Are you going to be able to edit out the downtime, the dead air that it took between the minute when the question was posed about this Alan Shepard guy and 17 minutes later when we found the answer without the aid of any technology?
Yeah, we can. I like it when you look things up online. I like it when it's all happens for real.
It's changed the whole dynamic of pub chat, though. I mean,
he
can you
become
imagine
a
doing that
US
conversation
senator?
20 years ago?
Yeah, I think he became a
did.
senator in there. Was that on there that you saw?
Well, I only know because I read the Tom Wolfe book, The Right Stuff, which talks all about the Mercury program.
Yeah.
And Alan Shepard apparently got quite annoyed because everyone thinks Scott Glenn was the first American in space because he actually completed an orbit, whereas Alan Shepard was kind of like an artillery shell, just fired up and then back down again.
Yeah.
That lowest bidder thing there, isn't that Steve Buscemi quotes that in Armageddon, doesn't he? Have you ever seen
Oh,
that?
I love Steve Buscemi.
I've never
film.
actually seen Armageddon.
Armageddon, absolutely wonderful
Hang
film.
on. Yeah, Armageddon is the one that NASA show to potential new recruits, and they have to spot all the factual errors in it.
That sounds quite like
The
a
entire
fun
film?
Yeah.
gig. So Armageddon was actually in the news this week because there is there's a NASA, or I think the United Nations has a meteorite watching program to look for any near collisions, and it was founded in the year that Armageddon and Deep Impact both came out.
98.
As they suddenly realised it needed to be done. And there was one, I think it was only a year or two ago, which exploded, no one saw coming, exploded 30 miles above the surface in Siberia.
Yeah.
And obviously, you had the sort of 100 kilotons, whatever it was, explosion. And they didn't see it coming. So, I mean, if you see any strange stars in the sky.
Yeah. Well, there's the one that exploded over Siberia, wasn't there? What was it called? The Tunguska incident. Was it a meteorite? Was it a bit of a comet? Or was it a UFO? Well, it's obviously a UFO, isn't it?
Well, the fact that we don't know what it is means by definition it's unidentified. Yeah. I don't want to sound like a smart ass.
Boom. Jeez, Mark.
By the way, I have to say this. I don't know if you want to chop this out or not, but I've looked down and 3 of the 4 of us, or 4 of the 5 of us, if you include the executive editor, are all wearing our Adidas trainers with the 3 stripes on the side. And there is a London connection here.
Or is it Adidas?
Or Adidas, yes. Well, you can say it however you want because it comes from Adolf Dassler, Adi Dassler. That's right. There is a London connection. In the 1966 World Cup final, obviously all the German players were wearing Adidas, but Adidas, to give one of each pronunciation in the sentence, they said to the England players, if you wear our boots in the final, we'll pay you £1,000 a man. And the England players' match fee, just for the final, was £60 per man. So they were going to be tempted by this £1,000. And in fact, several of them did, Adidas then said, even if you don't want to wear our boots, if you just paint 3 white stripes on the side of your existing boots, we'll still pay you the £1,000 a man. And I think 2 of the players did it. I think Martin Peters was one of them, and one of the other players just painted 3 white stripes on the side of their boots and got £1,000.
That is
I once
fantastic.
knew Martin Peters' auntie in a nursing home. She experienced the very first Zeppelin raid on London as a little girl. Yeah, she did. And her mother was desperate with worry, and she called the children in, and they were out playing. That's a true story.
That was a big thing in those days.
She became a landlady in Wandsworth in the 1930s.
Is everybody following this thread? This is great.
She was about 108 or 109 when she died. Amazing woman. Amazing woman.
There we go.
So we can't get her to confirm whether or not she painted the white stripes.
And now there's only Geoff Hurst left alive.
Is he the last one?
He's the last one. Oh. And he's just on his 3rd autobiography, called something like Last Man Standing, or just, it references it. And you think, when he gets to that stage, what possible new stuff is it? What am I paying my $18.99
Well, it's quite
for
appropriate, though, that he's got a hat-trick of autobiographies.
Oh, Henry, never off duty.
There we go. Can you imagine what that must be like, though, particularly to be a member of a band of brothers and then to be the last brother?
Yeah. It's they were a fascinating team. There's a brilliant Jonathan Mayo book about, do you know his stuff Minute by Minute? He's Simon Mayo's brother, and I met him, and he used to be a producer at Radio 2. And for the 40th, I think, or maybe 50th anniversary of JFK's assassination, they did a Radio 2 thing covering it minute by minute, or recreating the assassination minute by minute. So it's 11:30 and Mr. President Kennedy has just left the hotel and the motorcade's pulling out. So they did that, and then they did the book of it. And then Jonathan Mayo carried on and does brilliant books. He did the Titanic minute by minute, and then he did the 1966 World Cup final minute by minute, which is, I think, where I got that white stripes.
Titanic minute by minute must have been quite a while. It was about 4 or 5 hours.
Yeah, that's what's great. Yeah, and the detail he gets from it is just stunning.
But there must be long periods, water level rising a bit more, realise something is seriously wrong.
Oh, no, the really spooky stuff is the mundane stuff. Like when they first hit the iceberg, no one was really concerned. It took quite a while for them to realise how bad it was. And bits of the iceberg fell onto one of the decks where there were still some passengers having their cocktails late at night, and they were getting bits of the ice from the iceberg and putting it into their cocktails.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
That's too neat. Really?
Oh, absolutely.
Oh, boy.
Iceberg old-fashioned. It sounds rather nice.
The real thing.
So when did you grow up in London? You were born in London?
I grew up in Cornwall.
Cornwall?
Yeah,
wow.
so
Do you speak Cornish?
No, I don't even say no. I don't speak Cornish. The only thing I've got is nie mówię po polsku, which is I don't speak Polish, and that's because I
sounds Lithuanian.
Yeah. Oh, it probably could be. It probably lasts. I don't know what Lithuanian is, but I went on a music tour to Krakow in the mid-90s to sing in a choir and play saxophone in old people's home. And anyway, one of the chaps on the trip, well, I was only about 12. His grandfather had been a Polish fighter pilot in the war and then had settled down in Devon. And so he gave us a handy list of Polish phrases.
Wonderful.
So my thing now is I can sing Polish nursery rhymes as I can say I don't speak Polish, which is very helpful in London these days, actually.
Is it easier to learn Polish or Cornish, I wonder? What's the more tricky language?
I wonder if people know the true pronunciation in Cornish, because it's been dead for a couple of 100 years.
Yeah.
Well, exactly. All these most of these organisations that exist to preserve the language, they're just pedants, and no one actually speaks it.
How many live speakers of Cornish are there now?
Very few.
I mean, it's gone from a hobby to a thing. I think they do try and sort of get school children now to learn a little bit of it. But the last true native speaker died in the late 1700s. And then there's just, as part of the wider sort of Celtic revival, there's more interest in it now.
There are still Cornish people who will still refer to Devon as England. They're a separate nation. They'll say, if they're going to Devon, they say, I'm going to England. It's a serious thing in that sense.
Yeah. It's even within Cornwall, though. I was looking, there's a pub down in Sennen, which I think is called The Ship or something as well. And Sennen's right down by Land's End. And then it's in quite a sort of the west bit of Cornwall beyond Penzance is very like a big moor. And anyone who's from basically the east of Penzance, so that's still quite deep, dark Cornwall, is known as the Over the Hillers.
Well,
So
that's the Ken Dodd line. Ken Dodd used to say that the oldest joke in the world is that the people in one village think the people in the next village are stupid. And it's Man U and Man City fans hate each other more than they hate anyone from any other team. And
they're both right.
So when did you first come to London?
After university, I came down. I worked for a sort of very niche financial magazine, which actually, despite the content, is
What, the Financial Times?
No, that would have been good. No, it was Euro Week. I was covering the bond markets just before the 2008 crash.
Oh boy!
So it was quite interesting that. But it was part of a wider stable of magazines which had things like Batteries Unlimited and stuff. So I mean, there's very niche trade publications.
Batteries Unlimited.
Oh yeah, have I got news to you? I think some of our stable would often appear within it. But actually, it's a really good lesson because I think across journalism you realise that actually there's lots of little villages, and this was covering finance, so it was considered good manners to take your contacts out at least twice a year. So if you've got a book of 50 contacts, you're essentially going out for a good couple of lunches in the city every week.
Sure.
And that was back in the days when finance was all still in the square mile, wasn't it?
Yeah, exactly.
The hedge funds went off to Mayfair, didn't they? Lots of the hedge funds guys went to Mayfair.
But you'd go to JP Morgan, Societe Generale, all these guys, and it was good manners, and we had big expense accounts to go take people out for lunch. And then it was very rarefied. Essentially, we had one edition a week, and we'd stay up till 3 o'clock in the morning putting that to bed. But the rest of the time, you're just gathering your stories for your one little section. Sure. And it was great. We had an outdoor bit which had a pub bench, which we just used to sit outside sort of chain smoking all day and looking over. And the rumour was that we were overlooking, because it was on the Strand, so we were one of the last people left on Fleet Street. So this is 2006. And the rumour was, because obviously you have all the Inns of Court around, that we were overlooking a knocking shop where all the judges used to go to.
So where in the Strand was this?
So this is directly opposite Royal Courts of Justice. I think it's called Ballet's House. Yeah. So I can't remember. Yeah, exactly, near that statue. And I think Euro Week, it's called something else now, but I think they've all moved down further towards St. Paul's. So they're still around the Strand.
Well, just opposite there is the headquarters of, what do you call it? Not the Dandy, the Beano, what's it called?
Yes, it is the Beano.
It's the Beano, yeah.
Yeah.
Directly opposite.
They're, just down, and they've got the original printing press in reception, haven't they? Which is the receptionist desk, yeah.
Yeah, and they own Find My Past. It's bizarre. Yeah.
No, fascinating.
Yeah. I wish I'd known that. I've just published the history of the Strand. So
have you?
Yeah. Bugger. So what was your first impression of London? I mean, you must have loved it. Where do you live?
So I was at Bristol Uni, and pretty much everyone decamped to southwest London, so Fulham, Parsons Green, which was, again, really fun part of town, lots of bars and everything.
Second time that Parsons Green's come up.
Really?
Yeah, this is brilliant. Yeah.
Pub quiz team there.
It's
Holly
fascinating
Johnson.
now, because it really shows you how property prices have changed. Is that there's now Russian oligarchs living in Parsons Green. So they've been sent further west from Belgravia through Chelsea, and now ending up
They
in
get
in
everywhere,
FW6.
these Russian oligarchs,
They really
don't they?
do.
Yeah.
It's one of 4 tube stations whose name includes the colour of the line that it's on, Parsons Green. Should we leave that one ticking for the listeners? See if you can work out any others in your heads as we go through, but we could leave that for the listeners ticking through, and we'll give the answer later on, yeah?
Okay.
Right.
Little bit
But
of
the
Easter
fact
egg.
that it's cropped up twice meant I had
Yeah,
to do
yeah,
that.
definitely.
So what are you doing now then? If you're not, because Tammy and I were just saying we know each other from diary days, but now that you're not diarying, what are you doing?
So, I mean, the diary was fantastic, but it was 80 quid a shift. And by the time my second child was born, I had to go and talk to my editor and say, I think I'm going to have to give this up. So now I work in, I do corporate investigations. So essentially it's using the same journalist stuff and probably the finance background.
Okay.
To help people when they want to work in weird and wonderful parts of the world understand what they're dealing with. Which is a big business in London. There's lots of different things going out there. And again, I think the sort of, the niche finance stuff's coming in sort of rather helpful again, being able to actually read a bond prospectus and understand what they're talking about.
And it's one of those worlds that keeps changing all the time.
Totally.
That's what the City of London has always done, is once they've been rumbled for one slightly dodgy enterprise, they just change its name and carry on doing the same thing under a different
Well, exactly. And I mean, going back to the Russian oligarchs, there's a lot of people now saying sort of, you know, Dmitri's been a great client for the last 20 years, but we probably ought to check him out now that Russia's invaded Ukraine. So yeah, there's a lot of that work about.
Yeah.
But it's great fun, and so I get to travel a bit. So I actually flew Virgin's open a new route to Riyadh, and I flew that the other day, and that was pretty good fun. And I mean, obviously Saudi Arabia is very different. But I think they're trying to build Riyadh from the ground up, because at the moment it's completely sort of flat and there's a few sort of skyscrapers.
As they're building from the building from the ground up, if they were to ask you to give them advice on what can we do to bring the magic of London to Riyadh?
That's very interesting. I think it's their history. I think the history of Saudi Arabia is fascinating. And actually, they've got a great museum in Riyadh. Which I go through, and it tells you from the dawn of time, which, you know, back to meteorites were sort of striking there, and
Really?
and all the sort of various tribes and stuff who crossed before the Arabs arrived, and then the birth of Islam. And obviously that's quite interesting because, you know, they're obviously the home of the two twin pillars of Islam, and but they're obviously talking about the world before Muhammad, and it's really fascinating. And I would trade on that history. I'd build more of that history. And there's an old town in Riyadh with various forts and stuff. And I think if you can keep that element of what makes Saudi unique, then I think that's what London has, and you know, it's a battle to preserve it. But I mean,
so is it closer to the British Museum or to the Natural History Museum or V&A, or is it a bit of all three? Or?
I'd say closer to the British Museum. Actually, I'd say it's very history and lots of artifacts left behind by all the various tribes.
I think that building from the ground up thing is fascinating, because if Peter Rees was here, I probably mentioned Peter last time I was on. Yeah. Because Peter's in my book, he's fascinating, and I love the fact that we're talking about this where we are now, in the Square Mile. Peter's argument, he was Chief Planning Officer for the Square Mile, and he says the reason that the city, capital C, is brilliant and Canary Wharf is soulless is that Canary Wharf was built from the ground up. It was created artificially in the 1990s, late 80s, early 90s, and they attempted to replicate the buzz of the Square Mile, and you can't. Whereas now, the reason that the Square Mile is going vertical, it's becoming a cubic mile. In fact, I was just walking on the way here. There's 22 Bishopsgate, which is brilliant. I recommend everyone go up to the view from 22. Have you done the?
No, I haven't.
The viewing gallery at the top is just stunning.
Is that the one opposite Liverpool Street Station?
It's just down. It's between Liverpool Street and here. But basically, that whole stretch, if you walk from Liverpool Street down here to the Ship, almost down at the river, it's all lined with skyscrapers now, all brilliant. And there's a new one going up next to 22 Bishopsgate, which is going to be called One Undershaft, which is going to be as taller than 22 Bishopsgate, as tall as the Shard. But the only reason they're building all those is that the Square Mile has run out of office space. It still needs millions and millions of square feet.
And yet a few years ago with COVID, everyone was saying it's going to be deserted, it's going to be empty.
No, it's coming back. HSBC have moved back from Canary Wharf to the Square Mile, to by St Paul's, the old BT headquarters building. And I don't know anyone. I mean, in financial services, how many people did you meet that worked in Canary Wharf that actually liked it?
Well, I spent 5 years in Canary Wharf.
Ah, okay.
Which is almost what prompted me to go and work for the Londoners' Diary, because I was spending my life going underneath London and never actually seeing it.
Yeah.
And I thought I got to actually be part of this city. And it was interesting. I think what I found with Canary Wharf was that you became really tight with my work colleagues, because after work you'd go for a drink and it has to be around there.
Yeah, nothing else to do.
Everyone's miles away from home.
Yeah.
And so you'd do that, and so we'd end up having these great drinking sessions and, you know, slightly dull pubs compared to what we have here.
Yeah.
So I didn't mind it. It wasn't as bad as I thought. And I loved the Jubilee line, I think, is one of London's architectural marvels. I absolutely adore it.
Sure.
You know, I think this is it Norman Foster, the stations. I mean, I think they're just fantastic. And
that Westminster Tube station. Now, that was I think still is, certainly at the time in '99, was the deepest excavation ever in central London.
Really?
When they dug out the Jubilee line. Obviously, the District and Circle were already there. They had to shore up Big Ben. If they dug that all out without taking precautions, to use a phrase, Big Ben would have fallen over. And as they were digging out, they had to keep injecting the ground with concrete underneath Big Ben. And as it was, Big Ben tilted by an inch and a bit. which they predicted was going to happen. They said, it's all right, we can let it tilt that much, but if we do any more without putting the concrete into the ground, Big Ben will fall over. So
Wow.
such a fantastic cavernous space, as you say, as you go down into it.
That would have buggered up 39 steps, wouldn't it?
No kidding. I recall that. You guys remember that BBC series of a few years ago where they actually did 3D studies of below ground in Constantinople and Athens and Cairo? And basically they used the X-ray technology that you've talked about, Geoff, where they actually, you imagine they extract the whole thing and then the presenters walk through this 3D grand. I'm just imagining, as you're talking about Westminster Market, imagine if we could do a 3D study of underground London, where people could actually say, well, and that's when we talk about the deepest shafts and the tunnels and so on. And why is it necessary that people have to get into Monument Tube Station by going into Bank Tube Station?
Well, that's a nice segue, Tam, to my Underground London project from 15 years ago, where we were attempting to do just that.
Of course, it was
London
deliberate.
under London.
London under London.
Yeah.
And also how little we know. I've known people who worked in construction and gas boards and things like that, and they say you get every possible map and you consult every authority and say, right, if we need to get to a pipe that we know is there, if we drill down this 100 feet or however far we need to go, what are we going to hit? And they're confident that there's nothing there, and every map shows there's nothing there. And whoosh, down they go, and 20 feet they hit a pipe and wipe out a whole block's electricity or something. It's a complete mystery down there, as you say, Geoff. No one knows.
It needs to be tipped upside down, and then we can view it the other way, just pivot it over.
They must have archaeologists consulting on the digs, do they? Because there must be so much found when they're doing it.
And also the way it's changed. When they dug, when they built, the Reader's Digest built themselves a new building on Old Bailey, next just down from the Old Bailey itself, on the street called Old Bailey, in about 1910, something like that. Reader's Digest built themselves a new headquarters. It's down towards the southern end as you get down to Ludgate Hill. And because Old Bailey is by definition where the Roman London Wall is, Bottom Bailey Castle, as they dug out the foundations, they got to a bit of the original Roman wall. So they just dug it up and threw it all out, which they were allowed to do in 1910. But if you do that thing now, if you did that sort of thing now...
Well, most of the archaeology, probably 9/10 of the archaeology we have is all since the legislation changed that said when developers put up a building, they need to have an archaeological dig, and it's all happened since then.
The Bloomberg building. I hope you've done that. Have you done the Bloomberg building?
Oh, the Mithraeum.
Yeah.
That's cool.
The Mithraeum, it's all right, the temple itself, but the artefacts they found, really moving. Like the combs and sandals, and they found dice. And I thought, how moving is that this guy working in 2020, whatever it was, has dug this dice up. The last person to touch that was a Roman soldier gambling with his mates in London 2,000 years ago. Fantastic.
Yeah.
I was thinking of the Roman soldier. It sounds like my Monopoly set. Always losing the dice. It'd be funny to think of that in 2,000 years' time, suddenly being discovered by someone digging up a garden somewhere.
And they've also got this, I don't know if you can work this into the next piece you're writing, but they've got the first recorded financial transaction in the City of London there. It's a piece of wood on which one Roman is engraved to another, I owe you 10 denarii, whatever it was, and they've deciphered the symbols and they've got it preserved there. This place has been making money for 2,000 years. It's brilliant.
Yeah, really. Well, goodbye to you, Mark. We much learned you're going. Too bad. It means we'll have to have Mark Mason 3. Having thoroughly enjoyed Mark Mason 2. It's even better than Mark Mason 1.
Well, I was going to say, are the Mark Mason appearances like The Godfather? Because Godfather 2 is often cited as the rare case of a sequel that's even better than the original. So
there it is.
But then if we
3,
do
not so
Godfather
much.
3, we could be tempting fate by having me back again. So maybe I'll just email you some facts and you can throw them in. But no, I'd love to come back.
Or you can come back for a beer.
I'd
but anyway, glad to have you join us
today.
today.
In a different pub every time is part of the fun. So
well, that's what you said yesterday. The fact that it's in pubs is a bit of a
It's a
mistake.
very long-winded pub crawl. It's fantastic.
Financial journalist, he feels at home. Anyway, good seeing you. I'll see you around. Cheers, guys.
Cheers, Mark.
All the best.
Okay, bye
Cheers.
now.
Bye, Steve. Cheers.
Hi, this is Tam MacDonald, your host. If you're enjoying Timetable London, then please tell your friends about us by sending them a link to the show, giving us a mention on social media, or even by, or especially by, chatting about us in the pub. Timetable London, for everything you love about the world's greatest city. Happy moment, and another round of drinks gets delivered. Cheers, everybody.
Cheers.
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 And to you, Chris. There we go. So, down to the business. Henry, I'm really interested to know, you were on the diary, Londoner's Diary, for 3 years?
Yeah, I think 3 or 4 years. I did sort of started in December 2015, and I probably did my last shift in mid 2019.
Right. And for that experience, you are a confirmed lover of London, or your love has increased, or has it devolved into loathing and disgust?
I think my love for London exponentially increased doing the diary.
Really?
Yeah, I found it fascinating because I think you see so many different things. And I think, everyone talks about London being different villages, but you see different types of villages as well. Because the job is, I thought it was the best job I've ever had. Because the job was so varied. You'd go to a book launch one day, a film premiere next, the opening of a museum. Stuff I had no idea about, like the launch of a fashion brand in someone's very smart house in Holland Park. And your job was to try and mix amongst all those different places and sort of be a bit chameleon-like. And I think also in journalism now, I think it's probably more of a rarity than it used to be, but actually being able to physically go up and talk to people you're interviewing.
Yeah.
Where so much now is just gleaned from online or sort of the odd telephone interview. I think actually being able to chat and everything about the chat. So, you have to disarm your subject, get them happy, get them talking, and then start getting on to meaty questions. It was brilliant. And also there was something quite collegiate about it. I loved going out of all the different teams, and you'd see the guys from the Daily Mail, the Sun, all these different people, all slightly different approaches. My approach was always being the sort of hello old chap, posh person, hoping that would work. But then you'd get these very brassy girls from the Sun who would just thrust themselves forward and shove a microphone in someone's face.
Your super sizzling son.
Yeah. And then the Daily Mail people were so brave. I saw one of them interviewing Hugh Grant, and Hugh Grant obviously isn't the biggest fan of the press, definitely not the Daily Mail. And because of that, they have to be very straightforward and say, "Hi, I'm so-and-so from the Daily Mail. Can I chat to you about something?" And 9 times out of 10, you'd probably get told to F off. And I watched this girl front up Hugh Grant and have a really good chat with him. And I was just like, big guns, that's very ballsy of you. So I loved it. I loved all that drama around it all. It was a really great fun thing to do.
So that's a lost art now, isn't it? I mean, you don't need that art anymore, do you?
Well, I think it is. I mean, so when I first started doing, I wrote a bit on the Daily Telegraph, had a column called Spy, which was done by Celia Walden. The Independent had the Pandora column. The Evening Standard had the Londoners Diary. Those are kind of all gone. And Londoners Diary is still there, but it's just a picture-led thing now. So Dave Bennett, the great sort of contemporary London photographer, will have a few great photos from an event, and then someone will write 50 words a copy about it, and that's the page. I think that Daily Mail's still got it, and it's got the Ephraim Hardcastle, which is a really fun column. It's got the Richard Eden column, and then the Times, which Mark Mason's editing next week, has a great diary column too.
Oh, is he? Oh,
yeah. So,
Telegraph's got Peterborough, hasn't it?
Sorry?
Peterborough in the Telegraph.
Peterborough, yeah. They revived the Peterborough. That's a long-standing one.
Yeah, it's Christopher Hope now.
Yeah, and I think, is that Atticus on the Sunday Times? Is that right?
No, Atticus is Sunday Times, yes.
Yeah.
Yes, you're right.
So there's two, and I think it's great. It's a bit I always love reading newspapers.
So do you think that the internet has changed it all? So you've got London List, and you've got all these different sort of online blogs and online columns now that are available. Has that changed these dedicated London-based newspaper columns that we were familiar with?
Yeah, I think totally. I think clearly the bottom's fallen out of the publishing industry in terms of advertising revenue, and that's had a knock-on effect. And I think when I first moved to London, there was the London paper, there was another free sheet in the evening, and then the Evening Standard, you still had to pay 50p for the Evening Standard, or whatever it was.
I remember my first article was in something called Girl About Town. Do you remember that?
That's so appropriate, Chris.
Yeah, wasn't it? Just, but they used to give this away free at the time. But it was
You can't
huge.
just leave us
I mean, it was
hanging
huge.
like that. What was it about?
Well, I used to write sort of funny articles. So I think my first one was what happened if my sister married Prince Charles. I would become the Queen brother.
I can imagine.
Sort of thing. But I mean, there were all sorts of people who wrote for it. And you just read it on the tube on the way to work or whatever, and they give it to you. But I mean, a huge number of copies they gave out. So it was, they
You
made a
didn't
lot of
write
money.
a love advice column from it.
I didn't know. I wouldn't be much good at that. but,
So would this have been distinctive to London, or is the experience you describe, or that you recall from your 3 years there, could you have been Henry Williams in Paris writing a Parisian equivalent?
I mean, I think the Parisian equivalent could be really interesting, actually. I think, I just love the idea of someone sort of puffing on a gitan while they think of a sort of suitably witty response to your question at a opening of an art gallery while quaffing champagne. I think that'd be an amazing idea. It's actually a really good idea. I might try and do that.
But how did you get the job on London's Diary?
So I had a couple of things. I think I'd done my work on a financial magazine. I'd gone and lived in Hong Kong for a bit to sort of try my luck out there. Came back to London and really wanted to sort of try and make it in nationals. And so I approached a couple of journalists I like reading. So I approached Toby Young on Facebook and I approached James Dellingpole on Facebook. And I just thought they're two writers, I really like their style. And
Lord Young, of course.
Sorry?
Lord Young,
exactly. Yes. And they both very sweetly got back to me. So Toby Young said, you should start a blog because that's a new thing. And he was totally right. That was 2007. And James Dellingpole came back and said, you should try writing for the gossip columns because that's how I started. So I found a mate who was writing at the Telegraph. He got me a few gigs on the spy column, which Celia Waldron was doing. And then sort of went from there, really. And then I went back into sort of city life for a bit, got bored of it, and so sent a message to Joy Lodico, who was editing the Evening Standard's Londoners' Diary then, said I'd had some experience before. My experience was mainly sort of very dated Big Brother contestants from 10 years before. But would you be open to me doing a couple of shifts or finding some stories? And so yeah, they brought me on board, and I essentially just made them lots of coffee and tried to be nice, and they kept me coming back, which was really sweet of them.
It's lovely when that works out, eh?
Yeah, exactly.
very enterprising.
Was there anybody, particularly amongst the guests the people that you associated with at the openings and the interviews and the rest of it? Was there anybody you met over that time that you came away thinking, gosh, that person is particularly charming. I didn't really have a view of that person, but that's a really nice human being.
It's really fascinating. I think always that. I'm always amazed when people give you the time, particularly when they're sort of very sort of busy and stuff. I can't think of anyone I was just sort of like, I was blown away by how amazing they were. But I mean, I think it was generally everyone was nice. The very few people would turn around and be an arsehole to you. And I think as long as you were respectful and polite, people would generally sort of go with it. But you did get very straight to it. I remember sort of scabbing cigarettes of Suggs from Madness at one party. I think mainly so I could say I had done it. But I always thought it was quite a good opening line. It was like, it's 1 o'clock in the morning at a late night party, people are still going. It's like, can I grab a fag? And then that's an opportunity to have a chat with people.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I think, that sort of interplay, almost, I think once you're past the barrier for a lot of these events, once you're past the barrier and you're kind of in a sort of safe place, then people do let their hair down a bit and, give you that opportunity to speak. I think as long as you're quite honest about it and what you're trying to do.
Sure.
Some people would be quite defensive.
Didn't you meet Kelsey Grammer at one time?
Yeah,
he was a hero of mine.
The Cigar Smoker of the Year Awards.
That's right.
Which
yes.
Boysdale do. I don't know if they still do it every year, but they used to get Arnold Schwarzenegger, Dolph Lundgren, all these people. And I mean, that was a real fight to get that gig, actually, because you'd go to this big whiskey party at Boysdale and Canary Wharf. They'd give you a whole bunch of cigars, and then Kelsey Grammer was there, but then also I think Dolph Lundgren was the guest of honour that time. And amazingly, he stood up, he was still looking amazing, probably in his 60s by now, and came up and recited a poem I think he'd written about how much he loved cigars. So it was very
what?
Cigars.
Oh, right.
And then we all went on to Smoking Terrace and had a great smoke.
Didn't he do a PhD in engineering?
Did he? I mean, he would be... Yeah, I mean, he's really fascinating Blake, actually. But I mean, again, it's pointed to the economics of this job. I got very drunk, had a really good time at the party, missed the last tube back from Canary Wharf, so I had to get a taxi all the way home. Taxi cost me 55 quid, and I got paid 50 quid for my story. So it cost me
Dolph Lundgren.
I know, it cost me £5 to go to a really fun party. So I can't say it was, but I mean, unfortunately, when life moved on,
Did that happen often?
What's that?
More than once. Whether you missed the last train home and had to take a hit on the gig.
Yeah, I mean, I had another really fun one, and I think the great thing about this job is it allows you to name drop with complete impunity. But I ended up at a private members club of Baz Luhrmann, the film director.
Yeah.
And that was really, great. He'd turned up at the V&A summer party just as it was closing. They'd closed the bar and run out of booze. And he was like, I can't get a drink anywhere. And someone said, come to my club, Baz. And I was like, well, can I join too? And I was like, yeah, join the entourage, turn up, end up in this club. And anyway, we were sort of chatting away, having a great time. I think it was also one of those situations when everyone else was too shy to talk because they'd suddenly felt in the presence of the big man. And then I think, as a chatty journalist, it was kind of incumbent on me to start making the conversation go. And then evidently I must have done something to piss them off, because eventually the PR guy was, I think you need to leave now. I still had half my mojito to drink. So neck my mojito, and suddenly I'm out on the street getting the double-decker bus home after my sort of 5 minutes glamour of Hollywood. But it was great. And, he was a really fun guy. We're chatting about growing up in rural Australia. I'd been in the school production of the Rocky Horror Show, and he said he'd put one on when he was young or something. So, yeah, bonding with strange people around is great.
Do you miss those days?
I do, totally. I don't know if I've got the stamina for it now. Anyway. But again, that was one of the other joys of the job. Was, I'd be 1 o'clock in the morning on the night bus home. 5-6 hours later, I'm in the Standards office, pitching the stories I got. And it's like, okay, you've got 2 hours to write it, and then suddenly it's going to millions of Londoners, and what a cool experience.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Did you want to be a journalist when you grew up?
So I never really knew. I think I always wanted to be a war correspondent, but probably
correspondent.
Yeah, but probably didn't have the balls to do it. So I was like, okay, what's the next
If you
best
had
thing?
been, you wouldn't have kept them, would you?
Potentially. But...
So I think that was probably the sort of teenage dream was to go and do that. And so I think left uni. I was like, okay, I'll try and make it in journalism. How do you do it? Go and write for the trade press, or go and write for the local press, and try and work your way up into it. And it was a tricky time, but there's plenty of my contemporaries have succeeded at doing it, and are writing for nationals or in broadcast. And I think having tried that path myself, I'm my admiration for them is all the more greater, because it's a difficult thing to achieve and to do. But equally, it's a very broad thing, journalism, and I think also the diary was a really great understanding of meeting writers in different forms and in different areas.
Who's your hero in terms of diary journalism?
So, the Londoners Diary's got a very distinguished. I think it's sort of like Harold Nicholson and Randolph Churchill and all those great people. I think the sort of the New York, was it Anthony Hayden Guest or Hayden Beast as he was known. I think there's some very famous characters. But I think. I don't necessarily. I wouldn't call him a diarist, but we mentioned Toby Young, Lord Young. I think it was his book, How to Lose Friends and Alienate People, which I think really sort of set the scene of this looks like a really fun gig. I'd love to do it. And of course, that was the last sort of heyday of the 90s and the gigantic expensive pounds and all those things. But yeah, I think that was all fascinating.
Do you think that any of the really older diarists like Boswell or Pepys could have got a job on a newspaper diary now?
I hope they would. I think their natural curiosity is probably the main thing a diarist needs.
Name dropping too.
Well, exactly. And Pepys is a brilliant. I've never read Boswell. It's on my to-do list, but I've read Pepys, and
I think they gave birth to diaries, really, didn't they?
Yeah.
So they were the natural diarists.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Very much.
We all own Nigel Dempster. Do you remember Nigel Dempster?
Yeah, I do.
He was the doyen
exactly. He was the sort of doyen of diarists, wasn't he?
That's right. Yeah.
It's a really interesting thing, because I probably wasn't very good. I'd never been able to be an editor of a column. I think there's a waspishness you need to have, and a fearlessness you probably need to have. Whereas I think I always just quite enjoy just chatting to people, and, sort of nice, happy, sunny stories, which is great.
Right.
But it's not exactly if it bleeds, it leads.
Maybe when you've acquired a little bit of middle-aged circumspection in your children that have dragged you away from the front lines of this conflict zone known as London Diaryland, maybe you'll want to return with a little bit more of that middle-aged eminence grise and reinvent the diary.
And there were some great characters like that, even then. And you'd occasionally see them at a party. And there's a great chap. And I can't remember his name, but I could probably find it quite quickly. But there's a great chap who schooled me in how to do it, and his tactic was essentially hold a champagne flute and just stand around, and then sooner or later English people particularly, just can't bear someone just standing on their own and will go up and talk to you. And so almost they start the conversation, and then any questions you ask are just polite inquiry rather than anything too probing.
I don't know. I can stand there with a champagne glass on my own, and no one ever comes up to me.
I think if you just twirl it in the right manner, it will come.
Why don't it would just go down my shirt front?
Listeners can write to Jeff Browell at Timetable, care of Christopher Wynn, executive producer.
But yet you get to meet some fascinating people, don't you? Go into
You
their
more
houses
than any of
and
us,
say,
Jeff. What are you talking about? What do you think this
I've met
is?
I've met a few. Come
Well,
on.
one or two.
Yeah.
Well, particularly serendipitously, the stories you have of showing up at a door to talk to somebody and somebody completely different opens the door and you end up with a much bigger...
But Chapman Pincher was a really fascinating character, actually, the journalist. He was really amazing. He was 98 or 99 at the time. I asked him about the British. He was there when the British exploded their first atomic bomb, because he was the defence correspondent or editor of the Express at the time. And he went and he looked at me and he said, "I thought it was bloody marvellous." He said, "We had it. We had the bomb."
Fantastic.
Yeah,
Extraordinary man.
Yeah.
An extraordinary man. Yeah.
We've established a pattern we mean to repeat here because serendipitously we had Mark Mason join us to talk to Henry, and it sounds like the two of you guys have got something to take offline. And we've now got a new tradition of making somebody come back. Maybe you'll come back, Henry?
Yeah, totally.
But it's been fantastic to have you here. We enjoyed Jeff, Chris, me, all of us in this marvelous old ship. We'll get a photograph, and if anybody wants to see the photograph, they can look it up on one of our web pages. Anyway, thanks again, Henry Williams.
Thank you.
you.
Thank you. Cheers.
Join us next time when we will be coming to you from the site of London's very first coffee house, the Pasqua Rosé's Head, now the old Jamaica wine house off Cornhill in the city. Our very special guest will be Michael Mainelli, 695th Lord Mayor of London, who will no doubt be giving us some insights into the history, the workings, and indeed the charms of the City of London. You won't want to miss it.